Last week, I talked about suffering in 4 quadrants of life: body, mind, heart, and soul. And I talked about how those 4 different parts of our health, our physical health, intellectual health, emotional or relational health, and then our spiritual health, all affect us individually. Today, I want to take that and not look at it individually, but look at it relationally. How suffering affects the relationships in our lives. Let me tease that out. You realize that if you're physically hurting, it starts to limit the contact and the presence we can have with others. And I mean, that can be something like a really bad cold or the flu, where you just kind of want to huddle in the fetal position under covers and not be around anyone. But imagine at the extreme end, hospitalization, where you're physically cut off. And the contact is very limited. Intellectual health is different because once we get a certain track of thoughts in our brain, how easy it is to misunderstand another person. And so from something we thought they said, we can make some sort of implication which can lead to a disastrous consequence. Misunderstanding and doubt can rip us apart. The emotional side of things is equally divisive when you think about how if we're so angry or so sad that we start to speak and act strictly out of the emotion. And so it's anger and sorrow driving our relationships, which means how easy it is for people to hear the wrong thing, to misinterpret, and again, be split apart. Spiritual health can work very simply when we get caught up in something that is unholy, something evil. The destruction of that can start to warp our behaviors because our values, our principles, our sense of right and wrong, good and bad, can become so twisted that we begin to distance ourselves from others, or others distance themselves from us. In all 4 cases, the suffering doesn't just affect the person, it affects the relationships around the person. Enter the leper in the gospel reading and the first reading today. The title leprosy given to a person was a horrible sentence. It wasn't just the physical illness, whether it was Hansen's disease, what we know as leprosy, or any skin disfigurement, any sort of defilement, any sort of open flesh sores. But the answer in the ancient world was, we're going to separate you because we don't want what you got. And so to be cut off physically from your family, your loved ones, to be cut off intellectually, you don't have anybody you really get to talk to or grow with. Emotionally, you're cut off, and that part of your heart just shrivels up. Spiritually, it would get pretty hard for folk. In the best case scenario, they might be in a leper colony, a whole bunch of people who are very sick put together, begging for their food. But imagine if you weren't in a group or a colony, you were all alone, cut off, isolated from everyone. You see, isolation is one of the worst case scenarios of when relationships get wounded. Not that we're hurting in the relationship, but the relationship is so broken and so fragile that the answer is to just distance oneself completely away from everyone. Literally, to be in a room full of people, but so far boxed into a corner that the only thing I can see are the walls closing in, missing all of the people who are in my life. Isolation is horrible. When we are cut off from others, we're weak, we're fragile, we're very wounded. And so here's this broken, wounded man, isolated, and he has the courage to come to Jesus. Don't miss this. He's not supposed to be able to come in front of Jesus. He's supposed to be far away from people. He comes to Jesus, kneels down, and when he says, "If you wish," and what's the Lord's response? "I do wish this." And get this, Jesus touches him. You're not supposed to touch lepers. But Jesus touches this guy, and in that healing prayer and touch, this man is healed. But he's not just healed in the body. He gets everything back. He gets his physical health. He gets reconnected to his family, his friendships, his work. So intellectually and emotionally, he gets his life back. And he had an encounter with God. That's his spiritual life turned on fire. That in that encounter with Jesus, all of the relationships in this guy's life are restored. This guy has a life that comes into color. And folks, it's at that point that I would have us say, then how do we talk about suffering in our hearts today as it affects our relationships today? 3 things. First, we got to acknowledge when something's broken. If there are relationships in our lives that are not healthy, are we going to call it what it is? To see that there are people in my life, or people that I recognize, that maybe it's not with me and another, but it's with 2 people I care about. When I see it, do I name it? Or do I just sweep it under the rug, pretend it's not there? The first step is to call it what it is, to acknowledge what it is. Second, what's my part to reconcile this? How fast am I willing to say, I forgive you? How fast am I to say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? That we are called to be change agents for reconciliation. To do our part. To say, I realize that something here is broken or wounded. Can we fix it? I realize that something here isn't the way it should be. Can we work about making it better? I realize that this isn't as good as it could be. Can we start to make that a change? And maybe if it's not me and that other person, but if I see 2 people that I care about, to go to them and say, hey, this could be so much better. Hey, I know that there's pain here. I know that there's things that have been said or done. Hey, can we fix this? Hey, I love you. This can be better. That our work to reconcile, our work to reach out, our work to do our part to say, this can look differently. This should look differently. That's our part. That's reconciliation. And the third one, to get down on our knees and ask for God's help. The words of that leper are words that we can take home today. If you wish this, Lord, touch this, bless this. This is what's going on in my life. These are the people I care about. This is what's happening to me. Lord, heal this. Lord, please come into this. Lord, I'm going to do my part, but I need your help. I need your blessing. I need your strength. That like the leper, we can come to Jesus who will touch us. That we can trust in his grace and his strength because we need him. That's why he came. Because by ourselves, we don't have all the strength. So let's lean on him. In our body, mind, heart, and soul. And then, friends, quite simply, as we engage this, as we reach out to be instruments of healing, as we recognize what's broken or wounded, to trust that God, who wills that our relationships be healthy and strong, will give us the grace and strength we need to say, I'm sorry, or to say, I forgive you. God bless you all.